Well, so glad you're here. This is God's Comic Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, Christianity, and conservatism collide in a cacophony of clarity. Speaking of clarity, we have a very special guest this night, this eve, and it's somebody that's been on before, but they're so good that I brought him back, and it's a perfect timing. His name, Hugh Ross, and he happens to be an astrophysicist. So he's smarter than all of you guys watching, unless you happen to be an astrophysicist, and I'm not, nor is Wyatt, nor is virtually everybody watching me, but he is. And he's an amazing man. His name is Hugh Ross, as I mentioned, and it's a perfect timing because, as you know, this is the week that the story of everything, the Stephen Meyer documentary, comes out. We had Stephen Meyer and Douglas Axe on the last 2 weeks preparing for this, and I thought, what a great time to bring an astrophysicist in to also talk about God and nature, truth, natural law, the things that make the world move is God and God only. And anytime you speak to an atheist, they don't get it, they don't understand it, and it's been frustrating for me over and over again. So I thought what I would do, for those of you brand new to Brad Stine Has Issues, to bring in my partner in crime, my sidekick, and my producer, who happens to be my son, only because I made him from whole cloth. Please welcome Wyatt Stine. How do you do, son?
Oh, I'm doing just fine.
Good. I noticed that your hair is completely and utterly different. It's like a Samson type effect. It's shorter and you seem weaker. Does that make sense?
Yes, I unfortunately lost it in an industrial hairdressing accident.
Wow! How do you feel, though? Do you feel, I don't know, more handsome? Do you feel lighter in your head? Do you find that your neck is not as tweaked as it was, trying to keep your head balanced with all of that hair flowing?
I feel, how do I describe the feeling?
I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
It's like, imagine a bobblehead, but with like 10-pound lead weights on it.
Yeah.
And you take those lead weights off for the first time. So your neck is just bobbing back and down, swinging in the breeze for the first time.
So how's it feel?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I just did this because I had to look pretty.
Yeah,
That's it.
Well, you had a wedding to attend.
Yeah, I did.
An old bandmate
Yep.
who used to play bass for the Electric Needlefish, your
Yep.
famous band. By the way, those who don't know the Electric Needlefish, you can go on YouTube and put in the band Electric Needlefish and see Wyatt the drummer and his little chums, they were quite young, doing original songs that they wrote, if you just want to have a little laugh. You said you were going to talk about Hugh Ross. He will be on here shortly, but I did want to have a little discussion with my son before I go off on something that has been bothering me and has been bugging me for a while. I want to discuss it, and I want to discuss just kind of the state of affairs of America, you know, for those who are watching this on this particular Monday over the weekend. For the third time, President Trump was almost assassinated, or at least somebody gave it a shot. No pun intended. So I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes, but and some other things that I want to talk about where I just was performing throughout the nation. But first, I just kind of wanted to have a little discussion with my son and see, you know, kind of where he's at and what he is thinking about. Wyatt, I just came across this. I wasn't looking for it, but I saw it, and that is that Komodo dragons have iron in their teeth.
I mean, yeah, beavers do too.
But like real iron.
No, I know, beavers do too.
So they have enamel.
Yeah.
A little bit, but apparently impregnated into their teeth is iron.
Yeah, that's why it looks brown.
And strong.
Yes.
You know, there was a time called the Iron Age.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard of that. It was a very, you know, as humanity went through various gradations of technological growth, there was the Bronze Age, and the Bronze Age was a time when they used metal that was made of bronze, which is a softer metal. Bronze is a composite of, are you ready for this? Or do you know?
I was waiting.
Do you know what bronze is made out of? The elements that.
Yes, of course I know what bronze is made of, but I thought you wanted to look cool.
No. I wanted to see if you knew before I jumped in. Go ahead. What is bronze the combination of?
Okay, bronze is an alloy of copper and tin, not to be confused with brass, which is an alloy of copper and zinc.
That's exactly true. And I appreciate you knew that because I didn't. I just figured if I pretended that I was going to get there, you would want to beat me to it and show your intelligence. But you do know a lot about the elements because you've always enjoyed physics and physicists and fizzy drinks. Anything with a fizz, you like it. You're in. You're all the way in.
Oh, that's the end of the sentence? Yeah. I mean, I do. I mean, I don't know what it is, but fizz me up, man, you know?
So let's think about this. So Bronze Age was say it again, it was tin?
Yeah, tin and copper.
Copper.
Yep.
Now, two very soft elements, right?
But still stronger than stone, which is why they
Right.
came after the Stone Age.
Right. So here comes these two things, and they're strong. And I guess they made axes out of them, and they made weapons out of them.
Anything with a blade you can make.
So how strong would you say it is, bronze?
Bronze definitely is way stronger than copper. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Like,
Was there a copper age?
yeah, I think there was. Yeah.
Okay. So-
and the only reason why they went to the Bronze Age was because copper stopped cutting it.
Okay, that's very clever. But to the point. Hey, I just wondered then, after the Bronze Age, somebody threw in a copper and tin, and then some other guy said, I got a better idea. What about the Iron Age? Now, iron is a very specific alloy. You're not going to believe this. It's made out of... Matter of fact, do you have any idea what iron's made out of?
Iron.
Yeah. Well, what's else is in it that gives it its strength? It's not just iron.
Yes, iron, by definition, is only made of iron.
They don't throw in something to give it some strength and some resiliency?
Why would they? They're not making steel. They're
Why-
making iron.
Well, then why didn't they go to iron first instead of that delineation into the Bronze Age that was a failure, unless you wanted to make a trumpet? Why didn't they immediately go to iron?
Well, because iron is a lot harder to work with. You need forges that can that have more heat to them
Okay.
to melt them.
So the problem was the heat.
Yeah, the problem was heat. Like you couldn't work with iron until they found a way to heat it up better.
Okay. Well, anyways, the Iron Age was a very huge breakthrough, and it certainly gave you a superior weapon. To have an iron sword over a bronze sword. I'm sure the iron sword would probably cut through and destroy a bronze sword. But that being said, this whole thing started with Komodo dragons, and I just stumbled upon it. I wasn't even looking for it. It just showed up, and I just was like a little bit amazed by it, even though I guess there's iron. We have iron, right? We take iron supplements, so iron's in our bodies too. But I don't know that it's in our teeth. Anyways, I didn't know that Komodo dragons had iron, and so that sounds like almost like a monster teeth, iron teeth. And then my son came up with this idea that beavers also have iron in their teeth. But I got to tell you something. When I think about being attacked by a Komodo dragon, fear, run, screaming, horror, being attacked by a beaver, laughing, cuddly, hysterical, not threatening, and yet both have iron teeth. Why do you think it is?
And the reason why beavers have iron in their teeth is because they chew wood, and it just makes it, it's better for their teeth to be virtually indestructible if they're going to be chewing on logs all day.
So you're saying that evolution selected beavers to have iron teeth so that they could then start doing what nobody else does, no other animal, and that is chew down entire trees.
I'm not sure if it was evolution, but it was definitely their dentist bills that led to that development.
So dentists try to encourage that thinking.
Beaver dentists used to make a pretty penny,
Oh, of course.
Of
And
course.
can you blame them?
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are just gnawing away on giant logs.
Yeah,
and that's
but-
going to wear away at your enamel. And
But unfortunately, the whole beaver dentistry business collapsed the moment the beavers entered the Iron Age.
that's right. Well, listen, here's the thing, son. And the point was, I was being sarcastic when I said that it was evolution that chose iron teeth for the beaver, because that's kind of what we went through with Stephen Meyer. You do all the editing on this stuff, otherwise you'd sleep through it. So you had to listen to what Douglas Axe had to say, who's a microbiologist, or Stephen Meyer, this understanding that selection, which is an term of agency, in other words, a volition, a volitive act. In other words, there's a subject by which they make a decision to try to accomplish something by choosing so. And that's what, of course, what the naturalist gives to evolution. It shows beavers that prior to having iron teeth, they had rubber teeth, and they didn't survive. Then they had bronze teeth, and it didn't last very long. They could almost get through the bark of but not any deeper. And so, and then one accidentally was born with iron teeth, and they passed that on because they could cut down trees. And let's face it, trees are crucial to a beaver's life because they make dams out of that. And if they didn't have dams, they would die, right? They would just die off without dams, right?
I don't know if they die off. I think the whole damming rivers up is literally just a impulsive obsession.
Okay, so my point is exactly what you're getting at, is that none of this makes sense. We see animals, we see species do certain things that allow them to live the lives that they have and pass it on to their progeny. And yet, it would have taken millions of years for them to reach a place where they are now so that they can continue to survive. Meanwhile, how did they get there when they didn't have all of those attributes is why evolution seems to fail. It begs the question, because this works, evolution must have chosen that, but evolution, of course, is not a brain. It can't choose anything. It's by accident. So they're always using architectural and or engineering terminology as though there's a choice or a mind behind it, when in fact, of course, it's mindless. That's literally what Darwin was trying to prove, that the most sophisticated thing on Earth, most importantly, the human and the human brain, can come about by accident and chemicals bashing up against each other over billions of years. So it just seems to fall short. But when we bring on Stephen Meyer and we bring on Douglas Axe and we bring on Michael Behe and we bring on these different folks, we find that this is exactly what they're saying, is that the evidence seems to lead to a mind. There's something bigger and grander than this. But God isn't as easy to understand and to see as three-dimensional things. And so for many people, if they can't see him in the way that they're comfortable, they just assume he's not there. And so you have to kind of draw conclusions as to, is there a mind behind DNA, for example, and having the coding system, which always has an author to a code. But this is the grappling that these people have to go through, and it's changing the landscape of science. And intelligent design is making predictions, and they are coming true. And we're having more and more Darwinists, if not admit that Darwinism isn't working, are looking for an alternative, because the Darwinism that we've grown up with simply can't seem to function the way they assume it would. And they're stuck with that. But with being materialists, they have nowhere else to go but to try to make it work within the confines of a philosophical idea that they created. It's arbitrary. Science can only be natural. There can't be any transcendent, nothing greater than us, nothing outside of the material world. That has to go away. And so no matter what the evidence does or doesn't do, we're stuck in this space, and that's what we're going to use to try to figure out how the world works. Well, that's what happens when you have a presuppositional philosophy. When you have already decided something is the way that it is, then you are stuck. There's no learning, there's no insight, there's no revelation that can come to you if you have cut off access to the potential for another way to think. Now, I bring this up because I just got back over this past week. I was in Dallas, Texas last Wednesday at the Hyatt Regency DFW Airport, and there I was performing for a pastors' conference for Turning Point USA's Faith Division Pastors Conference. Now, anybody out there who is listening or watching this knows that TPUSA was the late Charlie Kirk's organization that he put together. Now, I was always a big admirer of Charlie Kirk. He's a young man. He was quite the go-getter, quite an incredibly intelligent, well-educated guy, but more of a savant in that what amazed me about him was not even that he knew things, but that he could be very precise about so many different ideas and have specific data points that he had memorized, specific relevance to certain particular philosophical ideas or cultural concepts, and he was obviously well read in a quite an eclectic view of how the world and the Western culture works, but that he could recall the specifics. See, I'm pretty good. I've always read. I'm an autodidact, so I've read everything over and over. I love reading, and I've learned a lot, but I don't always remember details on every little, 3% of people do this, and 90% of the people do that, and so he really seemed to have that access, as well as the political realm. I was never really interested in the political realm. I was always more about the culture. How are people living? What is their moral absolute? What is the foundation for how they see the world? What makes them tick when it comes to how they behave? That, to me, I felt was more accessible to me as my intellectual interests. But more importantly, I felt like I didn't want to necessarily be an expert on the Ukraine. I didn't necessarily want to be an expert on, I don't know, racial and economic disparities. I felt more like I wanted to be more of a big picture expert on morals, on ethics, on behaviors, on choices. What does this choice lead to? What is the foundation for morals? And it's funny. We have an atheist interview I did. We haven't posted it yet. We're still looking at that as an upcoming post. But it really is the thing that as I've listened to numerous interviews and conversations and dialogues and debates between a theist and an atheist, this particular thing comes up over and over and over and over again. And I just heard another one. And it's something that I have said for quite some time, and it's something that I still hold to be true, and that is this. Atheists cannot grasp this one idea, that if there is no grand, immutable narrative to meaning and purpose, teleology, if there is no ultimate actual purpose for the earth, an author that created a reason why we're here and how the universe works, and that there's a purpose, an end game to it, if that doesn't exist, if we were just advanced molecules that got so big for our britches we became self-aware, but we're really just made up of the same carbon and iron, not with iron teeth, but made up of the same materials as the stars and everything else, which we are, but we transcended that and became able to look at stars and talk about them. Stars don't look at us and talk about us. Look at the sun and talk about it. Sun doesn't look at us and talk about us. Look at morals and discuss it. Morals don't look at us or talk about us because it is a concept. Only those who can deduce, induce, draw conclusions, have this sort of intellectual awareness of being subject-object distinctive. I can have my own point of view, subjective, but also there's an objective truth. There's something outside of me that exists, even if I don't know that there's other minds, but I assume they're out there. That there is a moral absolute, because it seems that all cultures believe that murdering your best friend isn't a good thing, or betraying somebody that you love is not good. And it's like, well, why shouldn't it be good? Maybe it should be good. And the secular humanist is stuck with, oh, it's just an evolutionary decision that we decided as humans that we're going to be nice to each other because it allows human flourishing. That's what drives everything. Yeah, we'll just be good to people, and I don't want to be hurt, so I'm not going to hurt you. And they all presume that just makes sense, right? Just makes sense. If I don't want to be in suffering, then I'm not going to make somebody else suffer. And all of that is true. I don't want to suffer, and I don't want others to suffer. But what is always explored from the theistic point of view is, but why is it wrong to make somebody suffer as opposed to a choice, a preference, a point of view, a behavioral formula that we've decided to do, and we can say why, because I don't want to be hurt, so it makes sense that maybe they don't want to be hurt. I understand that principle. But what they never can overcome, the atheist, is, but why is it wrong? Not preferable, not less painful, but wrong. There's something beyond just the physical attributes and the physical feeling, but there's something immoral about it, because morals can change with a democracy. That's why we are a republic. We're not a democracy, because democracy means the people rule. The majority rules. So if the majority, like in Nazi Germany, said that it's okay to kill Jews, that became moral. So we need to have this transcendent idea that we can always anchor our beliefs on, that never change. They're immutable. And that is the thing that I've never been able to watch any atheist grasp. I mean, literally, they can't grasp it. They just figure if I feel like it's obvious that people shouldn't treat each other this way, then that's the way it should be. And all we say is ground that in an objective reality that exists, that it's wrong to be evil to other people, or even to have the word evil, bad, wrong. All of these things have moral implications, none of which come from Darwinism. And we'll be talking about with Hugh Ross here in just a moment. But the reason that I'm bringing some of these things up is not only because there'll be more atheist discussions in the future and people that have a different point of view, but also because I was just at TPUSA. Now, it was a wonderful event, but I wanted to make a point, and I'll tell you what it is. So, the pastors that come to Turning Point USA are in alignment with Charlie Kirk's and Turning Point's point of view, which is deeply Christian. The West was formed on Christian ideas, that there is a God in heaven that we bow the knee to, that he gave us all of these things, even the government, but the government still bows the knee to God, that he gives us the moral truths. It does not come from people, because then it can be taken away. You can't take something from God if he exists. We believe in a sovereign nation to be able to have its own borders and have its own people and its own traditions and its own language and its own history. And we try to learn from it and grow from it and do better if we do something we think is wrong. And we used Christianity as the revelation of when we get off base to try to become better people. People say, well, the Bible justified slavery, and it didn't. Much of what we call slavery, when we look at it, was indentured servitude. In other words, you owed a debt, and so it was a way to pay it off. Or people were captured and put into slavery. And so the Bible said, well, here's how you should treat these slaves if you're going to have them, but this isn't the way it should be, but you're going to do it, just like when Moses said, I'm going to give you a bill of divorce, but you shouldn't divorce. But since you're going to do it like this. It was God trying to navigate a broken people in a broken system to not basically just run anarchy and destroy each other along the way until he could bring his salvation upon the earth, which was Christ 2,000 years ago. But the reason I bring this up is this. If you are a Christ follower, a true believer, and if you are, as you know from Brad Stine Has Issues, a disciple, you're seeking to the deepest levels of faith, where you discipline your life, where you do not do pornography. You do not have sex outside of marriage. You do not have gay marriage. That is a male and a female, and that you procreate and you have children. That you treat people with love, and your enemies you love and pray for. All these very, very difficult things. And if you're a gay person who believes in Christ, that you have to sacrifice that desire, that sexual desire, for God, because He said, "Give that to me." Well, God, I just want it to go away. No, you're going to feel it, but I'm going to ask you to give it to me. Just like the heterosexual man who wants to have sex with every woman he meets, he has to give that away and just keep it to his wife. That's a discipline. It's not the way we're born. I'm born desiring sex with virtually every woman I meet, and I have to temper myself and discipline myself not to do that. Not because I don't feel it, not because I don't desire it, but because I desire God more. Those who find anything, any behavior, any desires in their life that are more important than Christ don't get Him. And I think that's a big, huge missing piece in the American church, is this idea that you say this prayer with your head bowed and your eyes closed and you don't get embarrassed, and somehow you're saved, and then you just go to church and kind of hang out with other Christians, and that makes you saved. And I think there's a lot more to it. And I do believe that you can lose your salvation. I do believe that now. I didn't used to. But that comes with a caveat, and that is I think that people that end up thinking they were saved but aren't, never really were, because they didn't truly give away everything God asked of them for His sake. You know, the Bible says that Jesus said that no one can, God has chosen people, they're His, they cannot be plucked out of His hand, which means if there's somebody that deconstructed, or I was a Christian but now I'm not, they are plucked out of His hand. Well, Jesus said nobody can pluck my people out of my hand. So there's only one conclusion. They weren't His all along. They were kind of heading, they played a game and they headed where they needed to go because they never truly were willing to give everything away, especially when hard things came their way. That's when these deconstructors go off base. Either something terribly difficult came their way. They thought God would have healed them in the meantime or saved them or protect them from this. It happened anyways, so they feel like they were abandoned, thus they leave God. Or there's usually, not always, but usually some sexual component that they want to indulge in, or they have a son or a daughter or a friend who wants to indulge in sexual things outside of God's boundaries, and they love that person, so they want to give them the freedom to do that thing, so suddenly they walk away from thinking God would say this is wrong. This is very important because the Bible says that there will be those in the end times, as they face God, to say, we did things in your name. We told people they could have sex with anything they want in your name. And God said, yeah, you don't have the right to do that. You actually are breaking the commandment that says, do not carry the Lord's name in vain. Do not ascribe to God things that He already said are off limits. So this is a discipline. Work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Nobody thinks like that anymore, or in American church. We don't think it costs us anything. Well, it's costing us everything now. They're killing us now. They killed Charlie Kirk. But this is the thing that I wanted to make a point about philosophy and how it matters. When I was at TPUSA and worked for all of these pastors and their wives and family, I did my show. It's, if you know me, if you watch me because you like my comedy, I am unapologetically Christian, unapologetically conservative, unapologetically grateful for the United States. And I say that in the context of my comedy. I make fun of everything. I believe in free speech. Well, they are just loving it, laughing, enjoying it, because I'm dignifying something that matters to them. And they gave me a huge standing ovation. It was all finished. And it was great because I was amongst my people. A few days later, I went to Indiana. Now, I'm from Indiana. And I performed for a Lincoln dinner for a local Republican group. Now, when you think of Republicans, you think of conservative, because that's what they say they represent. And when I went to do this show, there were great laughs, and there was applause, and there was insight, because everything that I bring is not just comedy, but I also try to inspire with faith-driven ideas and conservative ideas. That's all part of what makes me a hybrid and a unique comic. It's why pastors bring me in who are true Christians and true conservatives, as in classic Christianity, classic Christian theology. So they bring me in because they know that's what I'm going to stand for, and yet we'll laugh along the way. But there were moments where these guys were very, I don't know, quiet, and there was a tension in the room, and it was confusing. Just a few days earlier, I had performed in front of all these pastors who are supposedly exactly what these people, these GOP guys, are, Christian conservatives. And they just loved it, and it was just perfect. Everything melted together. It was wonderful. Well, then I'm with these guys. Well, after the show, the person that brought me in was very grateful. He loved it. He said, listen, this is why I brought you here. I appreciate it. But yeah, there were some constituents in here, and there were some people here who are running for office, and there are people here who've been in office for quite a while. And you might have stepped on some toes. And I ended up getting an unsolicited message from somebody who said, I was at your show. And I thought maybe the comedy would be the best part of the night. But I think nothing was even more important than watching politicians squirm. You said things that they have not heard, and I'm so grateful that maybe this will be the only time they hear you stand for these principles. And I didn't expect that, but it made me reconsider, why did the TPSU full bore, all in, this is perfect. I come to the couple days later into people who represent the GOP in the State House, right? Representing our values. That's what they say they're protecting, Christians and conservatives. And they're concerned, and it's because they're not truly conservative. They're not pulling their weight. If they've been around a while, they're probably compromised and corrupt. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you go into Senate or Congress, kind of not that rich, and you come out rich, you're corrupt. You're corrupt. Somebody paid you off. It's not complicated. And that's what I didn't expect, my friends. And it made me realize why God talks about the fruit. James talks about the fruit. He doesn't care what you say about Jesus. He doesn't care what you say about going to church or loving God and country. He cares that you live it out, that you see fruit from what you claim to be who you are. If they see fruit, if you prove in your votes, if you prove in your commitments, if you prove in the people you've aligned yourself with, if you have a track record in your life, let alone if you're in the political realm, in your in what you've done in political realm to stand for certain principles that you said you were going to defend when we voted for you, you're going to see in the fruit. They're either going to come through and be who they promised they would be, or they're not. And the fruit will prove what their words were, either lies and manipulation to get the vote and the power, or that they are consistent with who they say they are. The Word, Jesus said He's the Word. Word created the universe. Word is very important. It's your integrity. It's your morals. It's your ethics. You speak your word, you come through with it. You follow through with it. And that, my friends, is what tells you who you actually are. Well, those principles, those natural principles that God put into the universe, those moral absolutes that He gave us in the revelation of reality, which is His Bible, and in the universe to prove that there's natural laws that will never change because He holds everything in the palm of His hand. These are the things and part of the proof that God is real and that He exists. And so tonight we have a very special guest who is an astrophysicist, and he's a Christian man. And what I love about him is he will talk about the scientific ideas and proofs of God, and then he'll go find a passage in the Bible to correlate with it. So he doesn't use the Bible for science, he uses science for science, and then he finds in the Bible, the revelation, the Word of God, where it comports to what God has given us access to. And that is, we get to observe His handiwork. We get to observe it through the intellect He's given us to show what He has done, so we can be even more in awe and amazed that God is real and that He's given us access to Him. And it's hard and it's difficult, and there's times when painful, horrible things will happen where you feel abandoned. But fear not, you're not alone. Jesus once said, "Why hast thou forsaken me?" You know what? The pain, the difficulty you're going through right now, is an honor. If you're a Christ follower, you have to say to him, I don't like this, I don't want this, and I don't understand this, but I get to share in the suffering of Christ, who also said, I sure hope there's another way to do this. I love that even the God man, and that man part of him, was to say, I would prefer not this. I would prefer that you just come in and rescue me and send a legion of angels and destroy my enemies. And it didn't happen. He said, but that's okay. I love you more than my desires. And that is what is expected of a disciple. And that's what we're here to try to talk about on Brad Stine Has Issues. That's why I come into churches and perform laughter but truth and inspiration and the call to discipleship. I did not know my comedy career would become a ministry, but it doesn't matter. It's God's. And he told me this is what I want, and all I said was yes. It's not easy. Pray for me. Please, please, please subscribe, like, share, and comment on these YouTube episodes so we can grow this and make it more productive, reach a larger audience, and even do more types of clips and special maybe sketches. You know, we're still trying to figure out what will make this the most interesting. The guests speak for themselves. I've had some wonderful guests, and I have a lot more, I hope, coming that will be even more interesting. And I love that you love that, and I do. I have the privilege of talking to these folks. But most importantly, that this drives people to the truth, that God is real and has revealed himself one time in human flesh, Jesus Christ, the game changer. That's why Christianity is true and no other belief system is, because he is a one of a kind, and he is ours. He's Jesus, and nobody else gets him. They all admire him, except for those who despise him when he holds them accountable for their behavior. They will go to hell, and they'll go to hell gnashing their teeth. You know, there's two people in hell. Those who are weeping because they've made such a horrible decision, and those who gnash their teeth sit in hell and say, I still will not honor and serve you. And they'll spend eternity in that regard. Can you imagine? Well, they're there right now. Our job is to try to keep them from getting there. And we do that by proving God's there, and he's somebody that we need to give our lives over to. So tonight, we have a guest that will help you get there. If you're a Christ follower, deeper relationship you're going to have with God. If you're a non-believer or skeptic, this might help you see perspectives of God you didn't know existed and give you the evidence you're looking for. So, come along for an interesting astrophysicist ride with God's comic Brad Stine and this amazing, interesting interview with astrophysicist and fellow follower, Hugh Ross. Enjoy. How do you do, my brother?
Doing really well, thank you.
Well, listen, like I said to you, I hope you don't think I was just trying to get into your good graces, though there would be nothing wrong with that. But I do respect deeply your intellect and how important it is that the body of Christ understands that there's many members, one body. And we're not all good at the same stuff. I mean, some of us simply have a better, I'm not good at math. I'm not, and I wish I was. It's not my strength. And I don't know that I could ever, frankly, be good at math just because somebody taught me. If your mind can't do it, it can't. Not everybody is equipped. I mean, have you found that to be, I wasn't expecting this question, but maybe it's important for people that listen to you. I mean, isn't it important to admit that not everybody can be an expert in everything?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm terrible at yard work,
Oh,
so
okay. Well, good for you. That just means you have wisdom. But you know, astrophysics is unique, and it's certainly it's not for everybody. It's kind of like quantum physics. I mean, it has a category that weeds out a lot of folks who might be interested in things, but take it to the level that you have. And what I really love, Doctor, is that, you know, you don't use the Bible to, I guess, try to, I don't know. You don't try to shoehorn the Bible in as though you're trying to surreptitiously say somehow these connect. To you, it's very obvious. I see the scientific knowledge of the universe. I make scientific, inductive, and deductive conclusions from that, which is the method that our people, by the way, brought to the culture. So I'm not, we might as well brag about Christians. But you also say, but here's the good news. Then when we come to the Bible, come to find out they correlate, that we're not trying to, I guess, like I said, write it afterwards like a false prophecy or something. The Bible is very clear that these things will science will catch up to it. So I wanted to start quickly with a couple other of your peers, I guess, just to let people see, because some people watching or listening right now, they might think, oh, yeah, they're one of these creationist guys, or oh, they're using the Bible, to try to basically surreptitiously get religion into science and blah, blah, blah. But there's a guy that is named Brian Cox. Is it Fox? Cox. Brian
Brian, yeah,
I'm sure you know who he is. He's an atheist, but he's like you. He's an astrophysicist, I believe. British guy said always makes him sound smarter than everybody else because they got that accent. But I just saw some. I mean, he's an intelligent guy, and he seems to have tried to make these types of deep scientific issues laymanized, so your average person can follow along. So that's good. But I saw him recently just talk about, they asked him about God, if he believed in God. And he said something that I was a little confused about, frankly. He said, listen, we don't even really know that the universe wasn't eternal, that we're not even, and I go, what? I thought that was established, that there was a beginning, that physics has at least landed there, that the universe had a beginning. So are they coming up with some new perspectives that is new, or is he still kind of lost in an older paradigm as to how the universe began?
well, a few months ago, I had a debate with a couple of cosmologists who are basically pushing that point of view. And what they're doing is they're redefining the beginning and redefining the universe.
Okay.
And so they take the position the universe is all that there is.
Yeah.
But what you see in Hebrews 11:3, the universe that we can detect did not come from that which we can detect.
Mm.
Okay, is there a beginning to what we can detect? Yes. And if you put that in front of people like Brian Cox, they will say, yes, there is a beginning to what we can detect in astrophysics. However, there may be extra dimensions of space and time. Maybe there's laws of physics, and so they're speculating about what might exist beyond what we can detect. Well, notice Hebrews 11:3 does imply there's something beyond what we can detect. You have God beyond space and time. The space-time theorems establish that space and time have a beginning, that space and time are created. So there must be an agent beyond
Yeah.
space and time that creates this universe. And so what I find amusing is these people who call themselves atheist astrophysicists are basically promoting a biblical perspective on the universe. But they're saying, hey, we can come up with a model of the universe where there's no beginning. But whenever people say that, well, beginning of what? And so if you're going to redefine the beginning term, redefine the universe, yeah, there are loopholes, but those loopholes are biblically consistent.
Oh, well, okay. So I didn't even, so you're saying, just to make sure I understand, and you're going to have to, help me in my ignorance. So I want to make sure I understand. Maybe it'll help others so you're saying that they are saying that the detectable universe
As a beginning.
has a beginning. Like the first time we were aware that something is here, that was the beginning. But literally before that, prior to our even ability to have access to it, that might still be out there. So this is speculation. This is just sort of another way of saying that there's an eternal material universe, but eventually we caught up to it because we're cognitive agents that have the ability to draw conclusions of data, and we were able to find a a measurable beginning point to by which we discover this is the beginning of how we perceive reality, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I just never heard that. So you're saying there was something before detectable universe as opposed to, but it still was there first and it still existed eternally. That's what
Well,
they're saying.
clearly God was there before the universe existed, right?
Right.
So something exists beyond the universe. And God created an angelic realm, which is in a different space-time dimensions. The Bible doesn't tell us exactly when he created the angels or their angelic realm, But the book of Job tells us that they were witnesses to God laying down the foundations of the earth. So they've been around a really, really long time.
Yeah.
So, and I run into a lot of atheists who say, you know what, I'm not going to believe in your God of the Bible until we know everything about the universe. And it's like, well, that will never happen.
Yeah.
But I point out to them, notice you're always in progressive retreat. You say,
Mm.
well, maybe we can speculate about what goes on in the first 10 to the minus 43 seconds of the Big Bang creation event. But now we have measurements that actually go 8 times beyond what's called the Planck limit. And
Mm.
so they say, well, we'll just back up a little bit and we'll speculate about what might happen. But I said, if you're always in a state of retreat, and as we advance in our scientific knowledge, that typically in science means you're chasing the wrong model.
Mm, mm. Well, and the one thing that is clear that I've always found a little bit interesting, and maybe it's just a spiritual dimension, so it does have a reason, but this is the same thing I kind of was discussing with Stephen Meyer, who I'm sure you're friends with. Um, I said, what is interesting about these atheists, or at least materialists, scientists, is they created a false border by which they said the only way science works, the only way that we can count on, only way that we can all kind of come together and see it in a coherence that everybody can agree with, is if it's material based. So we can't go find a transcendent mind. We can't go have some spiritual realm because then science won't work anymore. It has to be material because that's what science is evaluating is material that is accessible, that can be observed and repeated and weighed and measured. Well, that's arbitrary though. They basically have said we're not even going to consider that there could be something outside of the material world as an option. So when they say things like, we're just going to follow the evidence where it leads, I said, yeah, maybe you're doing that. But the problem is, if you've already removed a potential option that might lead you there, but you already said it's off, then you really can't follow the evidence because you've already cut off a potential observable concept that at least you should bring into the equation and see if it fits. So they've kind of painted themselves in a corner. They have to always backtrack because they have nowhere else to look but the material world. So it starts
Well,
getting
one
kind
way we can progress on this is that the atheists will say, well, the God of the gaps. You guys are always putting God in where we don't know what's going on. Well, there's also the no God of the gaps.
yeah,
So it's like, let's advance our scientific research and see what happens to the gaps. If the gaps from a theistic perspective get smaller and smaller, less numerous, less problematic, that means theism is probably correct. On the other hand, if the gaps are getting bigger and more problematic and more numerous, that's a sign that you're chasing the wrong model. Well, if you look at the no God of the gaps, the latest scientific research is telling us their gaps are getting bigger, more problematic, more numerous, whereas the theistic gaps are getting smaller, less problematic, and less numerous. But again, I run into these atheists who say, I'm not going to believe in your God until all the gaps are gone.
yeah.
Well, that'll never happen. We're never going to know everything about the universe. In fact, a philosopher, Kurt Gödel, in 1930, produced the incompleteness theorem, basically making the point, if we're constrained within the physics of the universe, we're not going to know everything there is to know about the universe. Now, a being outside the universe, namely God, could, but we humans are limited. Nevertheless, what we do see is 100% of the experimental and observational evidence tells us it's consistent with the universe having a beginning, space and time being created, and an agent beyond space and time that creates everything. And the experimental and observational evidence is increasing and increasing rapidly. And what I've noticed over the past 100 years is that it's always favored the theistic view. It's never favored the atheistic view.
Well, and there's another thing that puzzles me, and this is why I think that what's challenging, especially for scientists who love to think pragmatically. They like to evaluate data. They like to see things that they can look at and show everybody else because they can count on it. If they're used to that, that's what works for them. and they feel comfortable because once you're dealing with transcendence, it's mysterious, right? It's tricky. But one of the things that I think is interesting about this perspective is if you were a scientist and your entire purpose was to discover the truths of the universe and reality, and that's all you want to do. I really want to just get to the bottom of what is all this all about? Why are we here? I mean, it's the ultimate question. What's the meaning of life, right? Well, I say to you, well, what would be more amazing discovery? God or no God? I mean, wouldn't God be an even more, in other words, why would you find that repulsive? Why wouldn't finding God actually be in a miraculous, oh my goodness, look at this. God's out there. So there's something else that's causing them to reject that as even something to add to the mix. I would say as a Christian, that's a spiritual blindness. But is there something else involved that would cause them to even consider that to be somehow a detriment to discover that God's out there?
Well, if there really is no God, if reality is strictly materialistic, why would we even care about these issues?
Right.
And it's like we see in the book of Ecclesiastes, eternity is written on the heart of every human being.
Mm.
And the thing I've noticed when I've been debating atheist scientists, they can't seem to escape the fact that their life has meaning and purpose, that
Right.
destiny. Well, if the universe is strictly materialistic, then we human beings have no more value or purpose than a piece of dust, a microbe, or a rock. But the fact is, we care. How do you explain
Mm.
the fact that we care about these issues,
That's right.
that we're driven by these issues? I mean, I participated at a weekend conference a few years ago, sponsored by the Skeptic Society. And what I noticed when their team of speakers came out, they're all talking about why God doesn't exist, but the only God they addressed was the God of the Bible. The other gods of the religions of the world were ignored. I also saw how passionate they were about this God of the Bible not existing. And it's like, if they really believed that the God of the Bible didn't exist, wouldn't they be treating him like the tooth fairy? Wouldn't
Right.
they be treating him like Santa Claus or the Great Pumpkin? But their passion tells me that they really do believe that God exists. It's just that they don't like them.
Right.
After that conference was winding down, I talked to a lot of the atheists for several hours afterwards. And their comment is, it's not that we hate the God of the Bible, is that we despise his followers. And they all
Mm.
were telling me stories of how they had been wounded
Yeah,
by
amen.
with someone that named themselves as a Christian. And you see this in Matthew 7. If you will not forgive others, the one who created the universe will not forgive you.
Mm.
Based on the recognition, we humans have offended the Creator far worse than a human being has offended us. And if we don't recognize that, it's going to be, you know, impossible to have that relationship with God. Or as I was explaining to these atheists, they were complaining, why would your God send people to hell? And I said, God doesn't send people to hell. He gives you a choice of where you want to
Right.
spend eternity.
Right. Right.
Want
Right.
to spend eternity with God and his followers, or you have the mindset that you want nothing to do with God. You want nothing to do with his followers. Well, if that's your situation, God's got a special place for you. And what I find amazing, hell is optimally designed to make it as best possible, given the choices that the inhabitants of hell have made. Because I would argue the worst thing about hell is who else is there.
Mm.
And kind of like our prison system, the really evil criminals we put in a very high security prison. Why? Because we know that they have the potential to do serious damage and harm to their fellow prisoners. And you actually see that in Revelation 20. The inhabitants of hell are restrained to different levels of torment,
Wow.
proportion to the evil that they've committed, basically making the point. And Adolf Hitler has got the potential to do a lot more harm than, say, an Albert Schweitzer. Both rejected God, but one was a humanitarian and did a lot of good while he's here in the face of the earth, he doesn't have the potential to harm his fellow inhabitants as, say, an Adolf Hitler does. So you see that in Scripture. So I argue God even expresses his love to the inhabitants of hell, making sure, hey, given the choices that you made, I'm going to ensure that it not be any worse than it needs to be.
Well, I got to say, I've never heard that, and I've been a Christian my whole life. So that's what I love about your work. I love and so grateful, like that you find the Bible to correlate with science and reality, as opposed to again feeling like you're kind of begging the question or something. You really just show it's already was there. I'm just showing you how it confirms something we've finally caught up to and caught. But this idea of hell is pretty important because it is a difficult one, and it's one of the things I do want to talk to you um, about how your particular branch of science does have access to elements of God that is a specialty, like the universe, right? His creation. So that would be the fine tuning argument and so forth, like that, fit into your category pretty much. But also how, I hope as Christians we are honest enough to say there are difficulties with faith, there are difficulties with God, there are unexplainable or mysterious or frankly confounding things about God that give us pause, that feels wrong, that feels unjust, that feels unfair. Now, the easy answer is, hey, God knows everything. He has all the answers we don't know. He's got details we don't know. If he puts all the pieces together and shows us, oh, I see what happened. I don't know that when I'm in a traffic jam and I'm complaining, he said, just to let you know, had I not had this, in 3 minutes, you'd gone over there and you would have got hit by a car and killed. You didn't know that. But you're complaining about the thing that actually saved your life. Well, these are elements of God that have to be true because he knows everything. But we aren't privy to it, and maybe we never will be. People talk about, when I get to heaven, I'm going to ask God A, B, and C. I don't even know if we'll care. At that point, we're like, you're already here. You won. Who cares why you got here? Maybe we will. Maybe we'll still be curious, but I think it'll all make sense in an instant. And we're saying, I'm good. But I love the things that you just said because I've had my own interactions with atheists. I've started to kind of try to debate them a bit, and that was a couple of things that I came across. I'd love to get your thoughts on this because this is your expertise and you've been doing it a lot longer than me. I feel like atheism is built on a two-legged stool: anger and arrogance. They're always angry, and there's always this arrogance. Now, I call it systemic narcissism because you have to, if you've abandoned God, like Chesterton said, you don't believe in nothing, you believe in anything. Well, everybody's going to worship something. So to the atheist academic, it appears they worship their intellect, their ability to reason. That's what they worship. That's what they've replaced God with. My insight, my grasp of reality. That's true. Anybody that doesn't see it like me is a heretic, is ill-informed, is an idiot compared to my depth of insight. And here's the thing that I find really fascinating, Doctor. One of the phrases that they use a lot is, here, I believe in God if you just showed me enough evidence to convince me. And what I want to say to them, well, here's the problem, though. The same evidence is available for everybody. I mean, evidence is evidence. It's available to anybody that wants to look at it and assess it. But here's what I'm curious about. Here's an atheist. Here's me. I hear the evidence. I go, yep, that's compelling. I'm in, God. He hears the exact same thing and says, doesn't work for me. So either he's saying he's has an intellectual superiority that sees flaws that I couldn't see, or he's saying that the evidence was enough for me, really wasn't. I'm just such a dunce that I allowed a small amount of evidence that wasn't really compelling, but I was stupid enough to think that's enough for me. But I see through that. So how do they convince themselves that their interpretation of the evidence, because that's what we're dealing with, not is there evidence for God, it's do you this interpretation of the evidence hold weight. They say no, we say yes. So, how is it that they are able to discount actual evidence and justify it without basically ridiculing or having to hold everybody else in a lower esteem intellectually? I don't know how else they would.
Well, a good example of that is a debate I had with Peter Atkins. He's
Oh,
a
yeah.
history professor at the University of Oxford.
Everybody knows Peter. Yeah.
Well, I mean, on YouTube, you can watch a debate between the two of us. And throughout the debate, he was saying, well, you're a Christian, and you must be stupid, you must be ignorant,
Right.
you know. And I kept presenting scientific evidence for my Christian faith. And, we weren't really getting much coming back from Peter. Finally, the moderator got frustrated and said, Hugh, can you name some scientific discoveries that have were proven beyond a shadow of doubt would cause you to abandon your Christianity and join Peter as an atheist? I said, yeah, I can name several. He said, well, give us a few. And I said, well, if we were to prove that the universe didn't have a beginning, given a correct definition of the universe, that it really was eternal, it didn't have a cause, that would be catastrophic to the Christian faith. If we were to prove that we human beings are no different than the animals, that would be catastrophic to the Christian faith. If we were to prove that Jesus of Nazareth did not rise bodily from the dead, that would be catastrophic to the Christian faith. Then the moderator turned to Peter and said, hey, you've been challenging Hugh throughout this whole hour. You've got to base your beliefs on actual scientific evidence. What about you? What would cause you a discovery that would basically cause you to abandon your atheism and become a follower of Jesus Christ? And he just sat there for a while and said, well, I suppose if Jesus were to appear right now in front of me, that might be compelling. On the other hand, that would have to be a delusion. It'd have to be something going wrong in my brain. And the moderator said, well, then you're really saying there's nothing scientifically that would ever persuade you to abandon atheism and become a theist. And he said, yeah, that's about it. And then said, well, how come for a whole hour you've been saying you have to base your faith on actual evidence? Hugh's presented plenty, you haven't. So that was kind of the dramatic turning point in that debate. But I got to talk to Peter for quite a while when the cameras were off. And it's like, he's been through a rough life.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and he's very unhappy and he hasn't really, and, you know, I kind of talked to him and said, I think you're more of a default atheist than a real atheist. And I've seen that with a lot of atheist scientists I've debated. I mean, Peter has written, 9 books on chemistry, textbooks. I had to read some of them. So, and he's very accomplished and he's made some amazing advances. And a lot of these scientists, I would argue, are addicted to their scientific research.
Yeah. It's a
It's
religion.
it's so rewarding, so
Yeah.
fulfilling.
Yeah.
It's more addicting than watching video games.
Yeah.
So, and I remember there's one atheist I debated, and I said, "You're not really an atheist." And he said, "What do you mean?" I says, "Well, how much time have you spent thinking about the fact that you're going to die?" And he says, "Well, I really don't think about that." And what about the possibility there might be a reality beyond the universe? I don't think about that. He admitted he's getting so much joy and fulfillment from his scientific research, he never thinks about these issues.
Hmm.
Well, I would argue that's the principle of the Sabbath. We're to work 6 days, but we're to take regular time out of our busy and often very enjoyable work to focus on the most important issues of life. And a lot of scientists I know who call themselves atheists, I would say are default atheists. They've never really thought about the most important issues of life. And so, uh, not all atheists are arrogant. Not all atheists have really thought through these issues.
Yeah.
And when they do, and where there's no barrier, like some wound or hurt that's been ministered to them by someone who claimed to be a Christian, you can make real progress. I've had the privilege of seeing a number of atheist scientists come to faith in Jesus Christ,
Mm,
just getting past the hurts in their life,
yes.
of also getting them to focus on the most important issues of life. Saying, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to live forever. Maybe I need to think about these issues.
Well, and what you said kind of does confirm my own observation about the anger element, because anger would why would you be angry at God? Well, the only reason is if he did not perform in a way that you needed at a time in your life.
Right.
God, my mom's got cancer. Please heal my. I'm only 10. She dies. Okay, forget it, God. I'm out. This is no good. This is who you are. I just asked you to do one simple thing. So yeah, that pain could easily draw you to not only be against God, but antagonistic to him. Because they don't just, listen, if you choose to abandon God and choose hell, and that's how Christianity reveals is that we choose him. We're already heading there. And he's simply saying, hey, I can get you off of this track. And he said, nah, I'm good. All right, you chose it. But to choose hell is sad. But to try to bring people with you is evil. There's something else going on that must be addressed. And so I really find it fascinating that you saw that part of Atkins, the human part, the psychological part, because it isn't because he's not just giving you a diametrically opposed view and examining him. He's mad. He's critical. He's insulting. So there's some other psychosis going on in this guy that's beyond just let's have a pragmatic conversation, see what happens. He's got an agenda. He's hurt and he's trying to lash back. But I find it interesting that, just like you said about hell, and that it is a choice, that's what our faith teaches us, um, that they get angry at it, that it even is there. It's like, well, wait a minute, you're in the game if you exist and are able to observe things, then you're in. Okay. You're going to hell. God said, don't worry, I got you out. I can get you out. Here's the deal. But this is the rules. It's already in place, whether you like it or not. This is the rules, and they found that to be unjust. They find that I didn't choose to be born. I didn't choose to have this consequence. That's not fair. I should have agency to do as I choose. But they believe in science. I said, well, so if you jump off a building, are you going to complain that gravity is doing its job and condemn it, or you say you knew the rules? There's gravity. It's not gravity's fault that it's doing what it's designed to do. Hell's design was to the devil and his angels, a cost for abandoning God's holiness.
Well, I would say it's a failure to ask the right questions. I mean, you brought up the example, a 10-year-old boy, his mother dies of cancer.
Yeah.
Well, you could ask the question, why is there cancer in
Mm.
the universe? Why is there cancer here on Earth? Could God have done it a better way? And hey, uh, and you know, a bunch of medical doctors a few years ago asked me to give a talk on cancer. I said, well, wait a minute, I'm an astrophysicist.
Yeah.
These are all cancer researchers.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And he says, well, we just wanted you to give a different perspective. And I says, oh, I can do that in the sense that, I gave a talk on we are in the most cancer-free part of the universe where we humans can live. Anywhere else in the universe, the cancer rate would be higher. And we're also at the best time in cosmic history to have minimal cancer. And they said, well, why have any cancer at all? And I said, well, cancer is a direct consequence of living in a universe where you got thermodynamics, electromagnetism, gravity, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. If you got those laws of physics in place, cancer is going to happen. As Jesus said, in this world you have tribulation, but take heart, I've overcome the world. What raises a question? Is there a greater good being achieved by thermodynamics, electromagnetism, and gravity? And the answer is yes. Because we live in a universe where those laws of physics are in place, every time we sin, we experience more pain, more work, more time that gets dissipated to undo the damage of our sin. And those laws of physics basically tell us, hey, the more you sin, the more pain you're going to experience, the more work you're going to have to do. And since we don't enjoy extra pain, extra work, or wasted time, the laws of physics motivate us to avoid evil and pursue virtue. And the process discover we lack the resources within to lead a completely virtuous life. But as we look at the universe, we notice, hey, he put us in a place where the consequences of these laws of physics are minimal. Everywhere else it'd be far worse. This indicates that God has a care and a love for us. As we look at what we see in the universe, I mean, Job, before there's any scripture said, as we look at what we see around us, clearly it has to be put in place by a God who's extremely powerful and very intelligent and wise, but also very caring and loving. And yet I have this motivation within me to lead a good life, but I discover I can't do it. But as I look at creation, there's a God out there that loves me to such a great degree, is incredibly powerful and wise and intelligent. He must be prepared to do for me what I can't do for myself. And so the laws of physics basically reveal there's a creator out there that desires to deliver you from what you're not able to do. We all want to live a virtuous life and avoid sin and evil. We're incapable of doing it, but there's a God out there who will do for us what we're not able to do for ourselves. And so, thank God for cancer. I can now I mean, I survived cancer twice.
Wow.
So I'm being checked for cancer literally every year to see if it recurs. But it's like, uh, you know, just going through cancer made me think about, okay, what's the value and the benefit of the cancer? So, for example, if there was no cancer at all, there wouldn't be the heavy elements we see in the universe. Without those heavy elements, we humans could not exist, and we couldn't have a long history of life on planet Earth. So I'm able to look at the science and say, you know what? I'm so grateful there's a God out there that created a universe where there's cancer. And what I notice is he designed the cancer so that we can actually live 80, 90, 100 years without dying from cancer. I look at all the other animals in the face of the earth. I've had pet dogs and cats. I mean, once they get to be about 15 or 20 years old, they get cancer. We're able to go decades without getting cancer. And
Wow.
yes, children get cancer, but notice the cancer rate for children is orders of magnitude less than it is for someone who's my age. So I just see the blessings of the hand of God everywhere if you actually dig deep enough to look at the big picture. Okay, I need tin in my body to live. I can't have tin unless there's neutron stars merging together to make black holes. And so we need black holes in order to be able to live here. But if you got black holes, you're going to get cancer. But notice God put us in a galaxy where the supermassive black hole is 40 times smaller than
Okay.
it is in big galaxies. And the galaxies that surround us have black holes that are all in a tepid stage right now. It's like I just see the blessing of God everywhere. So I wound up writing a paper in a secular science journal. It was called Black Holes as Evidence of God's Care. And it's all about how God designed these black holes so we'd have the elements we need at the best possible level for human flourishing and human civilization, but also ensured that the consequences from that, especially cancer, is at a minimal level so we can actually live here in this planet, not for 15 or 20 years. We can actually live here for 80, 90, 100 years.
Okay, well, again, I've been doing this 5 years. I've had lots of guests, and already in 35 minutes, I found out that God has places in hell that are a little less as bad for certain sinners as others, and that tin comes from black holes, which we need to survive, but it also causes cancer. And so good. I mean, this is what makes your ministry so amazing because you find concepts that I've never heard before, and they're so amazing. And I got to laugh because I don't think there's too many people that would say, "Listen, I'm thank God for cancer. Here's why." And people go, "You got to be kidding me!" And you have legitimate perspectives. Because here's the reality: we do die at 80, 90 years. It's going to happen whether you like the consequences or not. This is how it works. So all you're trying to do is, but let's break it down and see if we can find some value here that comports with justice, with morals, with virtue, with purpose, with meaning. I mean, what good would love be if there wasn't a potential for hate? What good would healing be if you couldn't get sick? In other words, it's almost like for anything that is good to exist, there has to be an antithesis just to gauge it, just to understand what we're winning or fighting or overcoming. And I mean, I don't know if that sounds like God wanted sin, but I always looked at it like the cancer was a corruption of a perfect organism that should have continued forever, brought in corruption. And so suddenly the DNA could be altered, aberrations could show up, this and that. And that was where sin corrupted a perfected Eden, a beginning where apparently we were supposed to live forever. I guess, but God must have known something we didn't know because wait a minute, if there were animals in the garden, bats, they were eating bugs, so there's death. So I don't understand. So there's this is back to the mysteries.
Right. Well, the Bible is clear in multiple places. We live in a universe with immutable laws of physics. As it says in Jeremiah, as God doesn't change, the laws of physics don't change. And what you notice is the sun was shining before Adam sinned. It was shining after he sinned. They were eating before they sinned. They were eating afterwards. Well, the illumination of the sun is extremely sensitive to even the tiniest changes in the laws of physics. And likewise, when you digest food, that's extremely sensitive to even the tiniest changes in the laws of physics. The laws of physics have been put in place at the beginning of the universe. They have not changed. They will not change until evil is eradicated. Jesus right now is on a mission to completely eradicate evil. And in Romans chapter 8, it tells us a time will come when the full number of humans that God intends to redeem will be redeemed. And at that point, the laws of physics will have completed their purpose. And God will replace the universe with a brand new realm with different physics. And in that realm, there won't be cancer, there won't be death, there won't be decay. Why? Because sin and evil are no longer a factor. And this goes back to the Garden of Eden. I mean, here were Adam and Eve in the garden. They were free of sin. They had this wonderful relationship with their Creator. But notice God permitted Satan to come into the garden. And so I'm going to be teaching a class next Sunday. Why did God let Satan in? I mean, he could have kept him out for all of eternity, but he basically allowed Satan to come into the garden. Why? Because Adam and Eve lacked something that every follower of Jesus Christ today has. Namely, we have an eternally secure relationship with our Creator. That hadn't happened for Adam and Eve. Why? Because their free will had not yet been subjected to the ultimate test.
Mm,
By allowing Satan to come into the garden, their free will now was being subjected to the most challenging test possible. An analogy I've often shared with people, I've got a PhD in astrophysics. I have a piece of parchment which says PhD on it. It basically guarantees never again will have to be tested for my competency in astrophysics based on the belief I've already been subjected to the most challenging tests possible, so there's no point testing me any further. Well, likewise, God enables Adam and Eve and all human beings to be subjected to the most challenging tests. If we pass that test, then there's no other test that could ever have us abandon our relationship with our Creator. And so God's goal was that humanity would gain an eternally secure, loving relationship with Him. But
mm,
that can only happen if they're subjected
yeah,
to the most challenging tests. And so Satan actually is fulfilling a good purpose in
yeah.
the sense that, as evil as he is, he's enabling all of us to gain a pathway to an eternally secure, loving relationship with our Creator. And hey, Once all that redemptive work is finished by God, we get to go to a new creation where there's no gravity,
Yeah,
no thermodynamics,
there
no
you go.
magnetism. My body is not going to wear out. It's not going to have this physics. And, you know, I've had relatives who have had near-death experiences,
Mm,
and they tell me, hey, the doctors told me I was dead for 5 minutes. But during those 5 minutes, I was having conversations with people who died ahead of me in Christ.
mm,
Conversations were incredibly rewarding, and it felt like I had been dead for more than a day. And I said, John, what you were experiencing was being delivered from a single time dimension to experiencing geometric time. It was 5 minutes in our time, but because you were in, I don't know, two, three dimensions of time, you were able to have all of these intimate, rewarding conversations with people simultaneously. So it seemed to you like it was more than a day, but it was just 5 minutes. And so, I've often wondered how, if I enter heaven, how long am I going to have to wait to have a one-on-one conversation with the Apostle Paul or with Joseph or with King David and realize since my name is close to the end of the alphabet, it could be millions of years before that happened. But then I recognize in the new creation, there's no families, there's no marriages.
mm.
They're no longer necessary because we're no longer constrained to a single dimension of time. I'm not going to have to wait because God's going to give the Apostle Paul the capability of having billions of simultaneous private conversations with other beings there. So,
Well,
yeah,
that's an incredible another perspective that's intriguing, but it also presumes that the Apostle Paul wants to talk to us. He might say, "Nah, I'm not interested in Dr. Ross. I've heard his stuff. I'm good. I've got somebody
well,
else to
that's where
talk to."
First Corinthians 3, I think, encourages me. It says, yes, we followers of Jesus Christ will not be judged for the sins that we've committed.
Mm.
But guess what? All of us are obnoxious to one degree or another.
Yeah, yeah, right,
And so
right.
it tells us in First Corinthians 3, before we enter in to the new creation, we go through a refining fire, which
Mm.
basically strips away from us everything that would be obnoxious. So that means when I meet you in the new creation, you're going to be the most fascinating person that I can imagine.
Amen.
And it's going to be true of all the
For
other.
finally, I'm going
Right.
to be the most sad. Well,
There's no
let's
one I'm going to say, gee, I sure hope they don't come over and talk
yeah,
to me.
right.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk to him when I was alive on this earth. But let's talk about. Let's not. I don't want to waste the opportunity that I get to speak with you about your expertise. One of the things I do find kind of odd, and maybe God does odd. I don't know. Maybe God does things oddly because it keeps us curious, or maybe God is so beyond our comprehension that things appear odd to us because they come from his essence and it's beyond our capability to fully tease it apart. But let's talk about the universe because that's the thing that you became a PhD at. So we all, I guess, are aware that the universe is huge.
Yes.
I don't even think there's a word to describe how big it actually, but we all maybe have seen graphics of, well, here's the Earth, but let's pull away and suddenly here's our galaxy and then here's more. And it gets so to where you do get kind of uh, almost a little scared, like, man, we're just this tiny thing and we're way out here in the middle of nowhere. And whoa. So here's what I want to ask. It's more technical, but it does have spiritual elements to it that I want to explore. So, what is the boundary to the
Well,
universe?
yeah. Thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope, we know there's 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. Each galaxy has an average of about 50 billion stars. So yeah, there's a lot of stars in the universe, and we know all those stars adds up to only 1/4% of all the stuff of the universe. So you're right, the universe is enormous. But we astrophysicists now recognize, make the universe the tiniest bit bigger, we wouldn't be here. Make it the tiniest bit smaller, we wouldn't be here. So, for example, the total mass of the universe determines what your periodic table is going to look like. The universe begins with only hydrogen, just one element. But as the universe expands from the cosmic creation event, it begins infinitesimally small with a near infinitely hot temperature, but as it expands, the temperature gets cooler and cooler and cooler. It's the principle of your car engine. As the cylinder volume gets greater, the gasoline stops burning. Compress the cylinder, the temperature goes up. That applies to everything in the universe. While there's a window about 20 seconds wide where the universe expands through the temperature window where hydrogen can be fused into helium. And about 25% of the original helium gets fused into, hydrogen gets fused into helium. And when stars form, they have this ratio of 75% hydrogen and 25% helium. On the other hand, make the universe slightly more massive than it is, then instead of spending 20 seconds in that temperature window, because it will be expanding at a slower rate, it spends a little more time in that window. And so instead of making 25% helium, it might make 30% helium. Now, when future stars form with a higher ratio of helium to hydrogen, they very quickly convert all that hydrogen and helium into elements as heavy as iron or heavier. And so you wind up with a universe where everything is high iron or heavier, which means there's no carbon, no oxygen, no nitrogen, no phosphorus, and no possibility of life. Now, the other thing is, if you make the universe a tiniest bit less massive, the universe will expand so quickly that instead of spending 20 seconds in that window, it might only spend 18 seconds. So we wind up getting less helium being formed. And when the future stars form, they're unable to take that primordial hydrogen and helium and make anything heavier than helium. Once again, you've got a universe with no carbon, no oxygen, no nitrogen, no phosphorus, no silicon, no possibility of life. You say, well, how fine-tuned does it have to be? Well, in the absence of dark energy, you'd have to fine-tune the mass of the universe to within one part in a quadrillion, 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 quadrillion. And if you say, well, what about if you throw dark energy in? Well, you can lower the fine tuning on the mass only slightly because you need the universe to expand at just the right rate to get galaxies and stars forming where you could have life existing. So it doesn't do much to lower the fine tuning, but now you skyrocket the fine tuning in the dark energy. It's way more fine tuned than that one part in 10 to the 60th. And I like to compare that to the very best example of human engineering, inventiveness, and fine-tuned designs. And that one part in 10 to the 60th, well, it ranks 10 to the 37 times inferior or superior to the level of fine-tuning we see in the epitome of human achievement. This means that the one, and by the way, with dark energy, we're looking at a factor of 10 to the 97 times, which implies just based on dark energy and just based on the mass of the universe, that the one that created the universe, compared to us human beings, must be at least 10 trillion, 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 trillion times more intelligent, more knowledgeable, more powerful, and more creative and caring. And I cite that as evidence. We're not looking at the God of Buddhism. We're
Mm.
not looking at the God of Islam or Hinduism. This is the God of the Bible.
Mm.
Unique to the Bible is a description of a God who cares to that incredible degree. And now we got the scientific evidence to actually establish that truth.
So, are you saying then that to the atheist who looks at the size of the universe and says, man, this is so beyond measurable length that clearly we are irrelevant because look at the size of this thing. And it sounds to me like what maybe you're saying is what you don't understand is because we are the only planet that has life that, and most importantly, even not just life, but more importantly, a mind, the ability to observe and to draw conclusions. That's what really separates everything. I said this in my comedy once, but I think it has some truth, certainly at a you know smaller scale than the way you describe it. But I said, look, yes, the universe is indescribably large and beyond our beliefs. So people said, well, we're irrelevant. I said, but there's one thing I think needs to be not forgotten. No matter how large and gigantic the universe is, it has never once stopped to contemplate me, which means it doesn't know it's here. So I said, it seems to me that if I'm the only thing in the universe that can measure the universe, that can draw description about the universe, can draw conclusions, that can break it down, that can describe what it is, that literally has the ability to foment ideas that describe its material. I'm way bigger than the universe because I'm the only one that knows we're here to even think about it. So that puts me in a category beyond belief. So it sounds like what you're telling me, Doctor, is that it's not that we're just this tiny little speck and then this gigantic thing diminishes us. It's saying that's how much energy and material was necessary to allow this incredible tiny planet to do the things it's done. So this isn't
That's
redundancy.
exactly right.
Yeah.
The universe has to be precisely the size that it is, precisely the mass that it is, so that you can have one planet on which you got life existing. That tells us something about
Yes.
the degree to which the Creator cared for us.
Yes.
He didn't think it was too expensive to create a universe with 2 trillion galaxies so we could have this nice planet on which we could enjoy life. And also, he put us in the one place in the universe where we can actually observe the extent of the universe. I mean, I tell people, God gave us the Bible. It's got 66 books. He didn't give us just 2 books. He gave us 66 so we could read the whole thing. He also put us in a special location in the universe where we could read the entire history book of the universe. I
Mm.
mean, if we were put in any other location, we would not be able to use our telescopes to see back in time to the
What do you mean? What
cosmos.
do you mean by any other location? What do
Well,
you?
for example, if we were on Mars, if we were in a different galaxy or a different galaxy cluster, we'd be able to see part of the observable universe, but not all of it. I mean, we happen to be living in a special location in the universe where we can use our telescopes, and the farther away you observe, the farther back in time you see, because it takes light time to travel from those distant galaxies to your home planet. Well, we happen to be living in a place where our telescopes can see all the way back to the cosmic creation event. We can actually witness the universe being created. Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration. The closest we can get to the cosmic creation event with our telescopes is 100 billionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second after the cosmic creation event. But that's really close to the cosmic creation event. And because of that capacity, we're able to look at that and develop one of the most compelling, rigorous proofs that a God beyond space and time created the universe. I argue God wanted us to be able to read the book of the universe. He put us in a special spot in the universe where we can read that book. Any other place where advanced life is possible, we'd not be able to read the whole of the book. The other thing that really impresses me, he put us here at the right time. The universe is 13.8 billion years old. If God put us human beings in the universe any earlier than that 13.8 billion years, the light from the cosmic creation event would not have sufficient time to travel on the space surface of the universe and reach our telescopes. We'd only be able to see part of the past history of the universe. And if you put us here any later in cosmic history, the same thing would happen because now light from the cosmic creation event would be moving away from us at greater than the velocity of light. So once again, we'd only be seeing part of the history of the universe. He put us at just the right location and just the right time in cosmic history where we could read the whole book. And that's kind of what that was a factor in my coming to Christ. is realizing that God gave us this book of nature. And I read all the world's holy books, and the only one that fit what I saw in the record of nature was the Holy Bible. And so it's like God gave us two books, the book of scripture and the book of nature. They corroborate one another, but he also ensured we could read all of the book of scripture and all of the book of nature so we can actually look at these two independent witnesses of God, see how they corroborate one another, and be persuaded, if we look at the evidence, yes, there is a God beyond space and time who created me and cares a great deal about me and has a plan for my eternal destiny.
So is there though, if based on a beginning of singularity that expanded, and we know it's continually to expand, but is it expanding into nothingness and then and then it takes that space and it becomes something? In other words, if you were to take a spaceship that could literally keep going, is does it end, or is there a spot where it's kind of like it
Yeah,
has
I get asked
nothing?
that a lot. I mean, what's the universe expanding into?
Yeah.
Saying, well, all of the space and time of the universe is constrained to the surface of the universe. So, and a good analogy is think of planet Earth. It's a three-dimensional body, but we humans live on the two-dimensional surface of the three-dimensional Earth. In the case of the universe, all the stars and galaxies, all the matter and energy, and even all the space-time dimensionality is constrained to the three-dimensional surface of the four-dimensional universe. So what is there beyond that surface? No space, no time. What's interior to that surface? No space, no time, which is why astronomers say we can't see the center of the universe. The center of the universe existed 13.8 billion years ago. Today, there's no center because our reality is on the surface. So
So
it's,
you're saying that we, no matter how large it is, but it's still contained. It still has a boundary point by which it's all everything's happening within this space.
yeah, the
There is,
surface is getting bigger and bigger, but everything is constrained to the surface.
okay.
Also know that the universe is expanding more and more rapidly as time goes on. So that tells us it's not going to stop and collapse. It's going to continue expanding until God puts a stop to it. And I joke with people that means your waistline expands at a faster rate with every year that goes by as a result of the acceleration of the expansion of the universe. However, the effect is less than a quadrillionth of a centimeter per year. Your waistline expands more than that, there's a second cause.
Well, at least we can blame, yes,
You
we
can
can,
blame a little bit
yeah.
on the expansion of the universe.
Well, so the mystery of God, the difficulties of God, you described earlier with some kind of data, numerical data, uh, the intelligence of God. I don't know where that came. That was like crazy, but it makes sense. I mean, if he's all knowing, he's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, then he's kind of beyond our thought process. There really is nowhere to even begin to think like him. We get pieces of it because he made us in his image. So we have logic, we have reason, we have the ability to observe and draw conclusions, and they work. That means that we see foreshadow the truth into reality. It will work. So that's kind of prophetic, right? It's proof that God gives us elements of himself, but we're still constrained because he's the transcendent one. But it does seem that clearly he has to dumb himself down somewhat to help us um, contemplate him and to even interact with him. But when you talk about the Bible and his interaction, let's say with Adam and Eve, or with Abraham, or with Moses, or whatever, it's very um, human-like, right? I mean, he uses language that's very simple. He gives them very simple, take your shoes off. I mean, this is not big contemplative ideas. He's obviously making it available to our ability to assess the world because this is all we know. Uses our language, right? And so forth. But it does make him more simplistic, right? Makes him a little less ominous. So is he dumbing himself down for us, or Or when
Well,
he made us the way he made us, though, Dr. Ross? Because
well,
something,
that's addressed in the book of Philippians, where it says of Jesus that here was Jesus, the creator of the universe. He lowered himself and humbled himself and spent a few decades in human form living amongst us. And he was telling his disciples, I'm going to go away. And they were very saddened. Oh, because they were enjoying this incredible relationship with Jesus. And Jesus was telling him that relationship will end. But what did he say? It's better for you that I go away than that I stay. If he stayed, he'd still be in his lowered, humbled form. But by leaving, he regains all the capacities he had when he created the universe. And he says,
Mm,
I'll be able to do more for you if I leave than if I stay. Because when he left, now he was able to simultaneously empower all the followers of him. And that's what they experienced in the day of Pentecost.
yeah.
Oh, this relationship is even better when Jesus was with us. And so, and he said, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you.
Yeah. Well, and he
That is
also gave us his spirit, right? He said, I'm also going to give you my spirit
right.
so you can communicate with me in a way that you haven't been able to do before. But this is a great, I wasn't expecting this question, but there's not a question that you've not been asked in your career, I'm sure. So nothing's going to throw you. And it's not even but it is a curious one that is challenging, the Trinity, because it does feel, um, counterintuitive to a monotheistic God. It feels like, wait a minute, you can't say three is one and one is three simultaneously. Matter of fact, that disbands the laws of logic because it can't be an A and not A simultaneously, which is what it sounds like what we're saying. So, but I wonder if, based on this conversation, is physics is a way to perceive this, in that it wasn't that he became something else. He was able to project himself simultaneously into another dimension while maintaining the original. I mean, it's still difficult to grasp, but at least it actually has a scientific evaluation that isn't that is consistent, I guess, with wormholes or the ideas of multi dimensions that don't seem, that they can't be. Wait, doesn't the quantum physics say there's 11 dimensions at least or something? So they're already saying there's other things out here that's happening to us simultaneously that we're just not privy to because we only have the ability to assess three dimensions with our five senses. So there's something, it sounds to me, that God has given to us in physics that's kind of helping to help us grasp him, even though it's
Well, that was
challenging.
part of my conversion. I mean, I was studying physics at the university, and I wound up taking this course in extra dimensional mathematics. And that was the same time I was reading through the different holy books, religions of the world. Taking that course made me realize, hey, now I'm seeing a common denominator between the writings that undergird Hinduism and Buddhism, Islam, Zoroastrianism. They all put God in a four-dimensional box. Their theology all works within length, width, height, and time.
Mm.
But when I looked at the Bible, I saw this description of God as a triune being, three persons, one essence, one mind, one set of purposes. I said, this is a description that doesn't fit into length, width, height, and time. But I said, it also makes sense of the creation. Because what I notice is you got religions like Islam, where God is a single monotheistic person. And you see that in Judaism as well. But both those religions really struggle with the concept of the origin of love. Because if God is a single person, there's no capacity to express love or receive love. Love, by definition, is a relationship between two persons. And so in Islam and Judaism,
Mm.
God's alone. And the
Oh,
only way that God can experience love is to create personal beings.
okay.
The God of Christianity is not compelled to create. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they're already having a rewarding, loving relationship with one another, expressing love to one another, receiving love from one another. For them, creation was an option. It wasn't something they were compelled to do. And then the problem I had with, say, Buddhism and Hinduism, they got all these gods, but all these different gods are participating in different ways in creation. So, for example, we're having a lot of success bringing people with a Hindu worldview to faith in Christ because their Hinduism basically is telling them when you look at when you look at the realm, it's going to be filled with inconsistencies, things that are not harmonious, things that don't seem to fit. But when you study science, you discover none of that is true. It really does look like it was put together by a single mind or with a single set of purposes.
Hmm.
We don't see these incongruities or inconsistencies. Everything fits together in a beautiful, harmonious way to serve a consistent set of purposes. This really testifies to the universe being created by a being with a single mind, a single set of purpose. And that's the doctrine of the Trinity. Three persons, but one essence. As Jesus told his followers, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. I have the same character attributes as the Father and the Holy Spirit. And, we have the same things that we agree upon that we're going to do. And so the creation comes from that single essence, and therefore everything fits. So I've written a paper on our website about why science only makes sense if God is triune. But the
Hmm.
triune God defies our capacity to describe within length, width, height, and time. And that's not the only doctrine in the Bible. The Bible is unique in that it communicates that God predetermines everything. Every thought we think, every word we speak, every action we perform. But the Bible also teaches that God has granted us free will, where we're in control of what we think, say, and do. And so you got the Bible simultaneously teaching human free will and divine predetermination. And Christians divide over this, where they choose one or the other. But I argue, look at all the passages teaching divine predetermination. There's about 1,500 of them. Look at all the passages teaching human free will. Again, there's roughly 1,500 of them. It's like, I don't think you can dodge this. And there's 8 verses in the Bible that teach both doctrines in the same sentence. Now, you're not going to figure this out in length, width, height, and time. But a book I wrote, Beyond the Cosmos, I show you 3 ways you can have both simultaneously operating if you allow God to move and operate in a minimum of 3 dimensions of time. And the space-time theorems prove the creator of the universe can create space-time dimensions at will. And so God cannot be put into a 4-dimensional box.
Yeah. Well, of course.
And if we allow God to be that big, we can resolve these paradoxes we see in the Bible. Heaven's a paradox. Hell
Yeah.
is a paradox.
Yeah.
Free will, predestination is a paradox. The Trinity is a paradox. But what brought me to faith in Jesus Christ, only in the Bible do we see these paradoxes. The other religions strip all the paradoxes out because, in my opinion, they're invented by human beings. They
Hmm.
were not inspired by the one that created the universe.
Well, and I would think that, part of the things that the atheists are quibble with about God, that I don't understand this, or if God was real, he didn't love people, he wouldn't let a kid get cancer. But by the same token, to me, what they're basically saying is you really aren't understanding who God would have to be if he existed, because obviously you're not going to understand things. Clearly, it's impossible because we are limited in the way we can think. But what I'm curious about from your perspective, because you seem to have tackled all these difficulties, is it appeared that in the beginning with Adam and Eve, there was kind of a perfect communication between God and him, that God could even walk around. It's like he wasn't, I don't know if he was a spirit then, but somehow they could seem to see him as opposed to now where he's a spiritual dimension. So he's not even viewable, I guess, within optics. But I wondered to myself, so do you think that we had a deeper, easier, more equal grasp of each other at the beginning, and then sin cut off some of that communion, some of that aspect of it? Or was there just by the fact that God has to be beyond comprehension, that even when he created us, there was a limit to how much we could know about him, not because he was cutting us off, but he said, "I can't get you any closer to me because I'm that big. This is as far as you anything else can get because nobody else can be me, and I can't make another me. So I've given you as close as you can get to me, but now it's my realm from this point on, and you'll have to trust me." Is that which one of those do you think makes more sense?
No, Paul addresses this in Corinthians where he says, presently we see through a glass darkly. There's a lot we don't understand. But he says a time will come when you enter the new creation where you're going to be able to see clearly. In other words, God promises these mysteries that you're trying to explore, a time will come when they'll be resolved. And moreover, he says, this is not just you. The angels are mystified
Mm,
by what I've created. And says, guess what? They're intently observing you in order to learn something that you're already learning. I mean, the Bible tells us that presently we're lower than the angels, but a time will come we'll be elevated above the angels. Paul explains why. He says the followers of Jesus Christ are the recipients of God's grace. We directly experience the grace of God. The angels do not. The angels are observing us to learn about this mystery of grace. And so we're being taught and trained in a way the angels are not. And so, we experience this grace, we kind of take it for granted, but we're told the angels are utterly mystified by
mm,
this grace. And so Paul basically says, be aware, we're on stage. We're
mm,
being observed by all these angels, trying to figure out what's God doing with these human beings. What's he up to? What's his grace all about? Well, we get to directly experience it.
mm.
So we're in the graduate course. They're
Yeah,
watching us through
yeah.
this, but it's because of our experience of God's grace, a time will come where we'll be in a position to teach and instruct the angels themselves. And
But do,
also, yeah,
but I guess what I was what I was curious about your thought was even prior to sin, where we were going to be disconnected from him in the deep intimate relationship that the original humans had, which we know caused a rift. At that point, he kind of had to leave. He said, "Now I can't be in your presence because you're sinful, and I have to be amongst only that which is pure holiness. So we're not going to have the same closeness." But I still feel like I wonder if some of the confusion we have about God and the mystery about God is not him trying to be hidden as much as him saying, "There's only so far you can get to somebody of my stature. Even I am limited and how close I can get you to me any more than God can make another God of his equality. He can't. That's what makes him God. It's impossible to do another one of me. I'm the one of a kind." So I just was curious as to maybe if you wondered if or thought that perhaps he got us as close as he could get to us, where he said, "Nah, I can't."
well, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, before they sinned, had a wonderful relationship with God, with one another. And when they did sin, those relationships were broken. And God made it clear, hey, the relationships between men and women, they're not going to be the same anymore
Yeah.
because of this sin factor. But he said, I'm working to restore that which was lost and to actually give you something that you never had before you sinned. So he says, take hope. We're on a pathway to something really great, and a time will come when those relationships will not only be restored, they'll be greatly enhanced. What impressed me the first time I read through the New Testament is that when Jesus died on the cross, the veil in the Holy of Holies was torn from top to bottom. I did some reading on that. You got the temple, you got the outer court of the Gentiles, you got the court of the women, then you got the court of the men, and then there's this holy place, but then there's a Holy of Holies, which was the interior. And only the high priest could enter that and only once a year was he able to offer sacrifice. And there was this curtain separating the holy place from the Holy of Holies. It was made of felt. It was 4 inches thick and 20 feet by 20 feet. And the moment Jesus died on the cross, that veil was ripped from top to bottom, basically saying, because of his death on the cross, there's no longer a barrier separating humanity from God the Father. Because our sins have been paid for the first time, God the Father can look at us and relate to us as if we're sin free,
Hmm.
because Jesus paid the atonement price of that sin. And so that's what Jesus said about
Yeah.
communion.
Yeah.
When you eat the bread, think about my body broken on your behalf so that you can come into the presence of the Father.
Yeah.
My shed blood means now that the Father is able through the blood to give you power to live the Christian life. So the disciples lacked that power before the resurrection. With the resurrection, they gained that power to step by step acquire the character of Christ. And I tell all fellow followers of Jesus Christ, that's what's happening right now. As you submit to the work of the Holy Spirit in your life, that Holy Spirit, step by step, is transforming you to exhibit the character of Christ to
Mm.
God and to other people. So, which is what's so exciting about being a follower of Christ and getting old. I
Mm.
mean, I look at 1 Corinthians 4, it says, our bodies are decaying. But notice it takes a year or two before you notice, hey, I don't look like I did 2 years ago. And I can't do all the things I did 3 years ago. But what does it says? It says spiritually, we're being renewed day by day.
Mm.
In a period of 24 hours, I can see spiritual beauty in a person's life that was not there before, which means as I look at my fellow believers, they become more beautiful with every day they age
Mm.
because the spirit is exponentially being enhanced while their body is slowly decaying.
Well, what you've done with your ministry, and we're going to have a clip up so that they can certainly go to your website. I want them to buy your books. I want them to watch your lectures. I want them to come see you live. I want them to bring you into your churches because you're crucial to what's happening in America. We are in the West, the creators of the scientific method. We are the ones that created the understanding of that there was no class system, that all the rights are equal, that we are egalitarian, that God said men and women are intrinsically valuable and made in the image of God. Nobody else ever said that. We truly, everything that they hang on to that they believe makes people virtuous and better, that the progressives have hijacked as though they created it or that the Enlightenment came up with it. No, it was Christian stuff that God had given to humans so we knew how to interact in a way that was moral and honored his formula that he wanted to work all along. And I definitely think that you talked about the Holy of Holies that was ripped open. I don't think we appreciate and are grateful for what an incredible, enormous responsibility and sacredness was given to us. We walk in with our shoes on frivolously, and he says, "Do not forget what I have given you, because you need to walk into this space and forget how to breathe. This is very important that you take me as a sacred entity so that you can see me for what I am, and not only share with others, but allow me to conform you, because you were never called to be a Christian. You were called to be a disciple. It's very difficult. It's going to be a constant shaving away and molding you. It's going to hurt every time. And most everything you will ever learn that will get you closer to me is going to come with a cost, because the comfortable things don't teach us anything. But one thing he didn't make at the garden was a hammock. He expected us to get to work right off the bat, even when sin hadn't arrived yet. Get to work, tend to the garden. You are partnering with me. This isn't a welfare state. So as we leave, Doctor, and again, thank you for your time. I just so love what you do in your ministry, and I'm so grateful. I don't even, honestly, I don't know. There's other wonderful guys. I love Stephen Meyer. I love what they're doing in the intelligent design movement. But I don't know anybody that does it like you. I really don't. Your ability to take these deep scientific ideas find a scriptural advocate for it and just combine them together very practically, kind of is one of a kind. So you are very crucial to the body at this time. I hope God gives you another 20, 30 years, unless you're tired and want to go home. But we sure could use you while you're here. But I'm going to ask you just, if you would, just on one last question. The one thing I also like about the intelligent design movement is that they predict elements. One of the things that proves that there's a viable hypothesis is it can make predictions. They used to say there was junk DNA, and the intelligent design said, no, I think there's something here. Come to find out, that's what they came across. Oh, this had value. This did this. This did that. Well, those predictions should validate why it should be taken seriously. We are showing that there's there's a conclusion here that could only work if there was a design involved. So that's pure science. So I'm thinking from the cosmological perspective, which is your wheelhouse, even though you're good at a lot of things. Are there any predictions that a theistic cosmologist, astrophysicist, can make that we haven't quite arrived at, that will prove that only God could have done this, that you can think of, that would be an exciting sort of final element you could give to the listeners or viewers about how Christianity isn't trying to sneak the religious element into science, but in fact, they can't do without each other, because this is the revelation of reality. Do you have anything along that line that might be interesting?
Yes, I'm now finishing up my 8th book on the fine-tuning argument for God. And that's one place where there's predictions that, hey, the universe in which we live seems fine-tuned to make life possible, and us human beings explicitly possible. If that's the case, the more we study the universe, the more fine-tuning evidence we should discover. And that's what you see in the 8 books I've been developing. Each successive book is showing there's even more fine-tuning than we thought in the first place. And it's always been consistently increasing, not decreasing. So, and it's increasing at an exponential rate. That's exactly what you'd expect if there's a personal creator that put this all together for the specific benefit of human beings. One book I wrote, Designed to the Core, I said, notice as you read through scripture, God begins his works of redemption before he creates anything at all. That would imply that God has designed the universe and all of its subcomponents, not only to make life possible, but to make human beings possible. And not just to make human beings possible, but to make it possible for billions of them to be redeemed from their sin and evil. And so basically what I've done in Design to the Core is show you how every component of the universe is designed with the redemption of human beings from sin and evil to make all of that possible. And it's such that I now tell my secular peers, look, I know you're not a Christian, at least not yet, but if you will do your scientific research from a biblical redemptive perspective, it'll make you a more successful scientist in making scientific discoveries. And I basically say, hey, put this to the test. And if it makes them more successful, I'm hoping that that will motivate them. Maybe I need to seriously consider the Bible and the Christian faith, because it is making me more successful in making these scientific discoveries. So yes, there's enormous predictive power in a biblical worldview on creation. I actually wrote a book on this called More Than a Theory, which I basically, at the end of the book, give about 100 specific predictions that you can make from a Christian worldview perspective of what scientists will discover in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years. I mean, the latest book I'm writing, basically I made the point there are habitable zones that are necessary for life. I mean, you need to be living on a planet that's in the liquid water habitable zone. That was the first one discovered. And I said, well, now that we got that one, we're going to discover more. Well, we found out we're in the ultraviolet habitable zone. We're in the zone where we have just the right amount of ultraviolet radiation coming from our host star. Well, his latest book I've just finished talks about 23 distinct habitable zones and how life is only possible if you're on a planet and in a galaxy where you're simultaneously residing in all 23 habitable zones. And hey, I'm already on record. We're going to discover more. When we've gone from 1 to 2 to 3, and now we're up to 23
Hmm.
distinct habitable zones.
So
So,
would that rule out aliens, people existing and coming, in other, because they would need to have the same parameters? I mean, I know that's a little off topic, but that's a big deal. Now suddenly they're deciding the aliens are here. So it's
well,
like, wait,
what we discovered, I mean, there's 10,000 superclusters of galaxies, but we're living in the only one where advanced life is possible. And within that super galaxy cluster, we're in the only galaxy where it's possible. They need to rewrite all those Star Wars scripts. It's
hmm.
not a galaxy far, far away. Ours is really the only one that has the necessary characteristics, and we're orbiting the only star in our Milky Way galaxy on which advanced life would be possible on a planet orbiting that star. I tell my friends that are searching for extraterrestrial intelligence signals, saying, hey, if you can't find a star like our star, you're wasting telescope time.
Yes. Well,
So,
but wouldn't they also have to, and I apologize for asking more questions. It's just, it was because it's such a big deal right now. And it does appear that they're going to start utilizing this alien thing for some nefarious, just like the COVID. I mean, now that we know that politics have gotten into science and it's about controlling humanity and who knows? I think God's wrapping up the world's what's going on. But wouldn't that also mean if an alien existed in this other thing, they would have to know how to travel at the speed of light. They'd have to know, I mean, to get here, they'd have to do things.
well, believe it or not, about an hour from now, I'm going to be giving a talk to our scholar community, 350 of our scholars, on why, if you want to cross interstellar space, the maximum size of your spaceship is the size of a matchstick. Anything bigger than that will be totally destroyed as it crosses interstellar space.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, not even a bacterium can be put inside a spaceship and make it from the nearest planet outside of our solar system to our planet. And how do we know all this? We astronomers actually are proposing to the taxpayers, we want to send 1,000 toothpick-sized spaceships to the nearest planet outside of our solar system. And we can make this happen for a few tens of millions of dollars. But we know we have to send at least 1,000 of these spaceships because the dust in interstellar space will destroy 99% of them. But we're hoping that that 1% that is only partly destroyed will be able to send us back some useful information.
Why does it have to be so small?
Well, okay, in order to get there in any reasonable time, you have to travel at least 1/10 the velocity of light. But there's dust in interstellar space. If you were to hit a dust particle with your spaceship that's so small you can't even see it with a naked eye, 10 times smaller than the period at the end of a sentence, that dust particle will slam into your spaceship with the force of a baseball being thrown at you 100 miles an hour multiplied by 19,000 times, which
Okay.
means no matter how big your spaceship is, no matter how much armor plate it's got, it will be destroyed by even a very tiny dust particle.
Wow.
So, what we astronomers have figured out, you need to make the spaceship needle shaped because the velocity of the dust particle will basically be in the direction you're traveling. So we
Oh,
want to make it needle shaped to minimize the exposure of your spaceship to these dust particles. So if you make your spaceships tiny enough, there's a possibility if you send enough of them, one of them will escape being hit by one of those dust particles. But if you
okay.
make the spaceship, say, even 10 meters across or 10 centimeters across, it's guaranteed it's going to be hit by one of those dust
Wow.
particles.
See, now only a scientist would think of that. One of the things that I was always found fascinating when the aliens land here, when they've said that, is that here's this thing that they always say is smarter than us. It's always more altruistic than us. They have clearly a scientific grasp of things that are way beyond us because they traveled speed of light, whatever, so they have a capacity to have reached us with a scientific depth beyond anything we can grasp. And yet, When they finally get here, they crash. It's like you would think they would have at least had landing gear with everything else they came up with. That can we at least land if we made it this far? And so it sounds like the one piece of technology they needed the most, not crashing, they've neglected to add. Well, Doctor, I'm just a comic. I'm not you, but I sure love talking to you, and I sure hope I don't waste your time because I just love what you have to say. I love your ministry. I'm such a fan of your work, your books. Folks, again, we are going to tell them where they can see you and get all your see where you're lecturing. What would be the best place for people to contact you?
Yeah, the website's reasons.org. That's where they'll see a lot of all of our books are there, thousands of articles that they can read.
Yes.
They can also find me on YouTube. I do take questions on both Facebook and X, so they can find me there and ask me questions. So
Okay.
lots of ways to contact us.
Well, folks, again, reasons.org. What a great and amazing and honorable man, not only with intelligence, but just your demeanor. I can't do it. You're like you, John Lennox, Stephen, well, the other William Lane Craig. You all have that same thing. You're kind to people who are completely jerks to you, and it's like I'm not good at this. I can't. I got to kind of retack, and I think, well, maybe God made me a comic for that reason. It gives me permission to respond a little bit more vigorously. I don't know. I'm still weighing that because I don't want to be a bad witness. But by the same token, I get really frustrated and angry when they diminish and demean my God and my fellow brothers and sisters who are just strictly trying to talk to them and give them reasons to believe to save them from hell. But nevertheless, our job is to do the call, and God's job is to give us the results. So that's what we're here to do. You do it at an exquisite level, and I hope one day you'll be willing to come back on. We'll continue to talk about things. Maybe there's some new scientific discoveries that pop up, and I'll have to get you on here and say, what do you think about this, doctor? But folks, this is Dr. Hugh Ross, reasons.org. You've got to continue to pray for him, give to his ministry, buy his books, watch his lectures, go show up and just lift him up because he's doing some real heavy lifting that the rest of us couldn't do if we wanted to. Remember, if they ever say you're being politically incorrect, I always say thank you for the compliment. It means you are a truth teller. And no, you don't let the culture decide that you have to censor yourself, especially when it comes to reality. If you're a Christ follower, you're the last truth teller on earth. And remember, watch Brad Stine Has Issues because I'm doing what I'm good at, which is what? Putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.